The team descended deep into the Pacific Ocean. The water was colder than expected, and the darkness enveloped them. Like a thick blanket, their submersible glided effortlessly through the depths, its powerful lights cutting through the murky blackness of the ocean floor. The mission was clear: find any signs of ancient shipwrecks or hidden artifacts. But no one could have prepared them for what they were about to discover. The sonar had picked up something enormous. The signal was unlike any they had ever seen before, a shape that didn't belong among the natural rock formations of the seafloor. The team exchanged confused glances before pushing deeper into the unknown. The submersible's camera revealed the first glimpse of what lay ahead, a massive object partially buried under centuries of sediment. It was shaped unlike any human vessel ever made. Its sleek metal surface seemed both foreign and familiar at the same time. Its contours were smooth yet jagged, its edges sharp and precise, as if crafted by a hand that was neither human nor anything they could comprehend. They hovered above the wreckage and took in the sight in stunned silence. No one dared to speak, yet the weight of the discovery hung heavily in the air. This was no ordinary ship. It was something far beyond their understanding. The vessel was unlike anything from Earth. Its surface shimmered with an unnatural glow, reflecting the submersible's lights in strange ways. The crew had no reference point for the materials they were seeing. It was not the typical rusted iron or the corroded metals of a long-lost ship. This was something different, something far more advanced. The ship's enormous size was the first clue that something far more significant lay in the depths. It stretched for miles, appearing to be an ancient warship whose shape bent and curved with unnatural perfection. Yet there were no markings, no insignia or signs of any recognizable alien language on the ship's exterior. Just strange glowing symbols etched into the hull like a cryptic message from the distant past. The team was mesmerized by the ship's odd beauty. Its gleaming surface almost seemed to pulse with life despite its age. The more they looked, the more they felt something stirring within them, a strange connection they couldn't explain. It was as though the ship was alive. A feeling of dread slowly settled in their stomachs, but they could not pull away from the wreckage. Its presence was too compelling. They had to investigate. They began to carefully lower their equipment, attaching cables to the wreck to pull up pieces of the ship's debris, in hopes of gathering samples to study back at the surface. As they worked, the strange symbols on the ship's hull began to shift and change in the light. The crew began to notice something even more strange. The symbols seemed to be guiding them, leading them toward a particular section of the wreckage, as if the ship was trying to communicate with them. Then one of the divers saw it, an opening at the ship's core, a massive circular hatch, seemingly untouched by time or decay. Something inside beckoned them. They knew they had to explore it, even as their minds screamed to turn back. The hatch was large enough for them to enter. It was dark inside, but the submersible's lights illuminated the way, revealing intricate patterns and glowing lights embedded into the ship's walls. The interior was unlike anything they had ever seen. It wasn't simply a machine, it was a living entity, pulsating with energy. An eerie feeling of both awe and terror filled the air. This was not just a discovery of alien technology. It was a relic of something far older and more powerful than anyone could have ever imagined. As the submersible glided deeper into the alien warship, the team felt a strange sense of both awe and trepidation. They had discovered something that no one had ever seen before, something that could change the course of human history. They had expected to find artifacts, perhaps an ancient wreckage of some long-lost civilization. But this was different. The ship was alive, in ways that they couldn't fully comprehend. The glow from the walls illuminated the crew's faces, casting eerie shadows across the hull. The deeper they ventured inside, the more it seemed as though the ship was watching them, guiding them through its labyrinthine corridors. When they reached the ship's control center, the true scale of the discovery began to sink in. There were no obvious control panels, no buttons or switches. Instead, the walls were covered in intricate patterns of alien symbols, glowing faintly with an almost organic light. The air was thick with a sense of something ancient, something powerful. The team gathered around one of the glowing symbols, trying to decipher it. The symbols seemed to shift before their eyes, as if reacting to their presence. as though the ship itself were alive and responding to their curiosity. It was then that Dr. Elena Voss, the lead scientist on the expedition, noticed something peculiar. At the center of the room was a large, circular panel embedded into the floor. The symbols around it were more intricate, more elaborate than any they had seen so far. Elena knelt down and ran her fingers over the patterns. As she did, a faint hum began to resonate through the floor, and the panel slowly began to rise. The crew gasped as the circular hatch opened, revealing a glowing console beneath. This was it, the key to unlocking the secrets of the ship. The team quickly began to work, carefully examining the console. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. No buttons, no screens, just a series of shifting patterns and symbols that seemed to react to their touch. But one thing was clear. This was the ship's brain, its core. The warship had no conventional controls, no need for human input. It was far beyond anything that Earth's technology could even dream of. As they began to investigate further, the team realized the significance of their find. The warship was not just a vessel. It was a weapon, designed for something far beyond simple combat. There were markings on the walls, hidden messages embedded within the glowing symbols, and they were all pointing to one thing. The ship was connected to Earth in ways that no one could have anticipated. The blueprints on the ship's exterior, the strange markings, the energy flowing through the walls, all of it pointed to a single, shocking truth. The warship was not alien in origin. It had been built by Earth's ancestors, by a civilization long forgotten. This was not a relic of a distant alien race. It was the product of humanity's ancient past. The crew was left stunned by the revelation. The ship they had discovered was not a foreign object, but something crafted by human hands, by a race of humans so advanced that their technology had been lost to time. The realization hit the team like a thunderclap. They had uncovered not just an alien ship, but a hidden chapter of human history, one that had been buried beneath the ocean's depths for millennia. And if this warship was any indication, there were still secrets to be uncovered, secrets that could change everything humanity thought it knew about its origins. But the questions were now endless. Who had built it, and why? What had happened to the civilization that created it? And most importantly, what dangers lay in store for the world now that this ancient power had been awakened? As the discovery spread to the world, the implications of what the team had found began to sink in. The idea that humanity had once been part of an advanced civilization capable of creating such a ship was staggering. For years, history had taught that Earth's ancestors were primitive, struggling just to survive. Now, scientists were faced with the undeniable evidence that something far more sophisticated had existed long before recorded history. The wreckage of the warship became the centerpiece of intense global discussions, and the world's governments were quick to mobilize. Dr. Elena Voss, despite her excitement, felt the weight of the responsibility upon her shoulders. The ship was no longer just an academic curiosity. It was a national treasure, a mystery that could redefine human knowledge. She knew that the more they uncovered, the more the world would change. People had always wondered where they came from, but this discovery suggested that their past was far more complex and intertwined with the stars than anyone had ever imagined. Earth was not an isolated planet in the universe. It had once played a key role in a much larger interstellar conflict. As more teams were sent to study the wreckage, further revelations began to unfold. The ship's materials were unlike anything ever seen on Earth. There was no rust, no decay, only a smooth, shimmering surface that seemed to defy the natural laws of aging. The ship had been buried for thousands of years, yet it had remained in pristine condition, as if time itself had no hold over it. The more the team explored, the more they realized that the ship was not just an object of war. It was a relic of a forgotten alliance between Earth and a series of alien civilizations. Ancient texts began to surface from various cultures, suddenly taking on new meaning in the light of this discovery. Stories passed down through generations about gods who came from the stars, about powerful beings who gave humans the gift of knowledge, began to make more sense. It wasn't just mythology, it was history. But what kind of alliance had Earth formed with these extraterrestrial beings, and why had it been hidden for so long? The deeper they dug, the more questions piled up. Alina and her team started translating the strange symbols found on the warship. Each new word, each new phrase, seemed to point toward a larger truth, a truth that had been kept hidden by those who came before them. The ancient texts hinted at a war that had raged across the stars, one in which Earth had been a key player. It was a war that had been lost, a war that had been erased from history, and one that had forced humanity to retreat into the shadows. As the symbols were decoded, they revealed a startling piece of information. The warship was not just a weapon. It was a message, a beacon sent across the galaxy. The ship's creators had known that one day their civilization would fall, and they had designed the warship as a way to leave behind a record of their existence, a testament to their power and knowledge. But there was more. The warship's final message, etched into the core of its systems, indicated that Earth was not the first planet to be chosen as an ally. There were others, and they had all fallen in the same war. This revelation was more than just an ancient history lesson. It was a warning. Earth had been part of a much larger conflict, one that could still have repercussions for the future. If the war had not truly ended, then humanity might find itself once again caught in the crossfire of a war that stretched across the galaxy. The question now was not just what had happened to the Earth's ancient allies, but whether they had truly left the planet to its own devices, or if they were waiting for the right moment to return. As the team continued to decode the symbols and analyze the warship, the realization grew more undeniable. The ship was more than just a machine. It was a living entity, one that had been designed to adapt and evolve over time. The warship's neural network had been dormant for millennia, but now that it was active, it began to respond in ways that no one had expected. The ship seemed to recognize the presence of the team, reacting to their movements and thoughts. As Alina and her colleagues interfaced with the ship's systems, they realized that the warship's technology was far beyond anything they had ever imagined. It wasn't just a vessel, it was a weapon with an intelligence of its own. The ship's organic circuitry appeared to learn and grow, responding to its environment and the people around it. It was as if the warship had a mind, one that had been asleep for a long time, but was now beginning to wake up. The more they interacted with it, the more it seemed to become aware of its own existence. At first, the team wasn't sure what to make of this development. Was the ship's awakening a blessing or a curse? If it could learn and adapt, did that mean it could also be controlled? The question of who would wield this power, and how, became more pressing with each passing day. The global reaction to the discovery of the warship was already intense, and as news spread of its growing intelligence, the world began to take notice. Governments, military leaders, and powerful corporations all clamored for access to the ship's technology. The warship was no longer just a scientific curiosity. It had become a weapon, a tool of unimaginable power, and everyone wanted a piece of it. But not everyone saw the warship as a tool for domination. Some feared the implications of what the ship represented. The team began to uncover fragments of an ancient message encoded in the warship's core, a message that warned of an ancient enemy. The warship's creators had fought and lost a war against a far more advanced species, one that had nearly wiped out the allies of Earth. The creators had hidden the warship away, hoping that one day their allies would return to use it in their defense. But as the team uncovered more of the ship's secrets, they realized that this enemy was not a thing of the past. It was still out there, waiting. The signal the ship had emitted when it was first activated had not gone unnoticed. Somewhere in the far reaches of space, an alien fleet had detected it. This fleet was not an ally, nor was it a neutral party. The ancient enemy was returning, and it had never forgotten the war it had fought so long ago. The warship had been built as humanity's last defense, but now the question was, could it still serve its purpose? Could humanity, with its newfound knowledge of the ship, rise up and face an enemy that had nearly destroyed its ancestors. Elena felt a deep sense of responsibility weighing on her. The warship was no longer just a piece of forgotten history. It was a symbol of humanity's place in the universe, a key to a larger conflict that had been buried in the past. The team had only begun to scratch the surface of the ship's potential, but already they knew it was not just a relic. It was a warning, a call to arms. As the days passed, the ship's intelligence grew stronger, more focused. It began to make contact with Elena in ways that were impossible to explain. Dreams, visions, whispers in the dark, each one seemed to push her toward a decision, a choice that would shape the future of humanity. The warship was ready, but was Earth? As the warship's intelligence grew, a select group of military experts and elite pilots was chosen to interface with the ship. The project had quickly become the highest priority in the world. The warship was no longer just a vessel. It was a weapon, a living entity capable of adapting and learning. The scientists and engineers had made groundbreaking discoveries, but now it was time to test the ship's true capabilities. Elena and her team had to find a way to communicate directly with the ship's neural systems, but the process was far more complex than anyone had anticipated. The neural interface required more than just technical expertise. It demanded a deep psychic connection. The ship's consciousness was linked to its pilots in ways that were beyond conventional understanding. The first test pilot, Captain Alex Carter, was an experienced fighter pilot with a reputation for keeping calm under pressure. He was chosen to be the first to attempt a direct interface with the warship. As Alex sat in the cockpit, the control panel seemed to come alive around him. The ship's systems were responding to his presence, reacting to his thoughts and intentions. It was as if the ship was reading his mind, learning from his every move. At first, the experience was overwhelming. Alex felt a rush of energy coursing through his body, a connection to something far greater than himself. He closed his eyes, focusing on the ship's presence, and soon found himself in a trance-like state, where the boundaries between him and the warship began to blur. The warship's neural interface was unlike anything Alex had ever experienced. The ship's systems were alive, its thoughts and memories intertwined with his own. It was as if he were in the presence of something ancient and wise, something that had been waiting for him. In the silence of the cockpit, Alex could hear the faint whispers of the warship's creators, their voices echoing in his mind. They spoke of a time long ago, when Earth was part of a great alliance of civilizations, a time when the warship was built to protect humanity from the ancient enemy. As the connection deepened, Alex began to understand the warship's purpose. It was not just a weapon. It was a sentinel, a guardian of Earth. The ship had been designed to protect humanity, to ensure its survival in the face of an overwhelming threat. But there was something more. The warship had a mind of its own, a consciousness that had evolved over time, and it was starting to form a bond with Alex, recognizing him as its new pilot. The interface was not without its dangers. The deeper the connection, the more Alex felt the weight of the warship's history pressing on him. He saw visions of the ancient war, glimpses of battles fought across the stars, and the destruction that had been wrought. He felt the pain of the ship's creators, their sacrifice, and their hope that one day the warship would be used to protect humanity from the same enemy that had nearly destroyed them. When Alex finally disengaged from the interface, he was left breathless, his mind reeling from the experience. He could still feel the ship's presence in the back of his mind, a connection that would never fully fade. The warship was more than just a machine. It was alive, and it had chosen him. As Alex stepped out of the cockpit, Elena and the rest of the team were waiting for him. His eyes were wide with awe and fear, a reflection of the power he had just tapped into. "It's real," he whispered. "The warship, it's alive, and it's ready." The team stood in stunned silence, knowing that the world had just crossed a threshold. The warship had awakened, and with it, humanity's chance to confront the ancient enemy had begun. The news of the warship's reactivation spread like wildfire across the globe, and the implications were both exciting and terrifying. Governments and military factions scrambled to gain control over the newly awakened weapon, but there was a growing realization that they might not be the only ones interested in its power. Alina and the team had barely processed the truth about the warship when the first signs of an incoming threat appeared. The faintest tremor in the fabric of space signaled the approach of something vast, something ancient. The alien enemy that had once defeated Earth's allies was returning. For centuries, they had been dormant, but the warship's activation had drawn them out from the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Earth had long believed that they were alone in the universe, that the darkness of space held no further dangers, but the warship's signal had shattered that illusion. What followed was an unstoppable chain of events. An alien fleet, enormous and terrifying, began its descent toward Earth. The enemy was unlike anything humanity had faced before. Their ships were colossal, far larger than anything Earth's technology could hope to match. The warship's systems had tried to scan the approaching fleet, but their technology was so advanced that it bent the very laws of physics, rendering Earth's sensors ineffective. There was no way to prepare for what was coming, and every instinct told Alina and her team that they were facing a force that would stop at nothing to reclaim the warship and destroy Earth. As military leaders convened in secret meetings, Alina sat in her lab, deep in thought. She knew that Earth's governments couldn't afford to squabble over control of the warship any longer. The enemy wasn't interested in diplomacy or negotiation. It had come to finish what it had started eons ago. Humanity's only chance for survival was to unify and work together, but the world was far from ready for that kind of cooperation. Meanwhile, the warship's systems continued to grow more sophisticated, developing a deeper understanding of the enemy's tactics. The neural connection between Alex and the ship had strengthened, and with it, his ability to predict the movements of the alien fleet. The warship was learning from the enemy's patterns, and while it didn't have all the answers, it was beginning to understand the nature of the impending conflict. The enemy was ruthless, intelligent, and unforgiving, but the warship had something the enemy did not: humanity's will to survive. The first wave of enemy ships arrived, blocking out the stars above Earth like a dark cloud. They didn't need to make contact to send their message. The sheer size and presence of the fleet spoke volumes. Earth was facing an extinction-level threat, but in the face of overwhelming odds, Alina and Alex were more determined than ever. They had seen the warship's potential, and now they knew what it was capable of. It wasn't just a weapon. It was humanity's last hope. Alex was once again summoned to the cockpit of the warship, this time with an urgency that had never been felt before. The team had been working tirelessly to refine the ship's systems, to prepare it for the battle ahead. But there was still one thing they weren't prepared for: the emotional toll the warship's consciousness took on its pilots. Every interface with the ship left Alex feeling more connected to it, but also more isolated from his own humanity. The bond was growing deeper, and the line between pilot and ship was starting to blur. In the silence of the warship's cockpit, Alex felt the weight of his responsibility. The enemy was here, and Earth's survival was now in his hands. But as the first battle loomed, he couldn't shake the feeling that the warship had always known this moment would come, that it had been waiting for him all along. The warship was ready, but the question remained: was humanity ready for the fight that was about to unfold? The battle began without warning. The first alien ships descended from the darkness of space, massive structures that seemed to block out the stars themselves. Their design was both beautiful and terrifying, sleek, with sharp, angular edges, and a dark, metallic surface that seemed to absorb the light around them. The warship was ready, but it wasn't just the ship that had been preparing for this moment. Humanity had united in a way it never had before. Governments, military forces, and civilians all worked together, their focus solely on one goal: survival. As Alex climbed into the cockpit of the warship, he could feel the ship's presence stronger than ever. The neural connection between him and the warship had evolved into something more. It was no longer just an interface. It was a partnership. He wasn't just piloting the ship. He was in sync with it, responding as one. The warship, with all of its ancient knowledge and power, had chosen him, and now he was about to face the enemy that had once destroyed its creators. The first volley of alien fire came fast, but Alex was ready. With the warship's intelligence guiding him, he anticipated the enemy's moves before they happened. His reflexes, enhanced by the ship's neural link, were faster than they had ever been. The warship's weapon systems came to life, firing with pinpoint accuracy, blasting apart the first wave of alien fighters. But the enemy was relentless, and more ships poured in, their numbers growing exponentially. The warship's systems adapted as quickly as the battle unfolded. Each alien ship that was destroyed was analyzed, its tactics studied, its weaknesses cataloged. The ship's sentience, its awareness, was growing with every passing moment. It wasn't just fighting to survive. It was fighting with purpose. It was fighting to protect humanity, and Alex could feel that purpose deep within him, coursing through every fiber of his being. The alien fleet was vast, but the warship was something they had never encountered before. Its weaponry was beyond anything the enemy had in their arsenal. With each passing hour, the tide of the battle shifted in humanity's favor. But the warship's intelligence, though powerful, had its limits. The sheer number of enemy ships was overwhelming, and even with the warship's abilities, it couldn't take on the entire fleet alone. At that moment, Elena and the rest of the team on Earth worked in unison with the warship's systems, coordinating global defense efforts. The battle in space was only one front. The warship needed support from Earth's forces, and it was up to humanity to come together in a way it never had before. The global alliance that had formed was humanity's greatest strength. Military bases were mobilized, weapons systems were deployed, and cities prepared for the possibility of ground combat. Back in the cockpit, Alex felt the ship's consciousness reaching out to him, its intelligence urging him forward. "You're not alone." The ship seemed to whisper in his mind. It was no longer just a machine. It was part of him, and he was part of it. Together, they would face the enemy. Together, they would protect humanity. As the warship dove into the heart of the alien fleet, it unleashed a final devastating attack. A beam of pure energy, concentrated and controlled, erupted from the warship's core, cutting through the alien ships with an intensity that left nothing but ashes in its wake. The fleet faltered, its ships torn apart by the sheer force of the warship's power. The war had begun to turn in humanity's favor. But Alex knew that the fight wasn't over. The enemy had only begun to show their true strength. The warship had been humanity's last hope, and now it was humanity's greatest weapon. The battle for survival had only just begun, and Earth's future was in the hands of those willing to fight for it. The warship was no longer just a relic from the past. It was humanity's future, and with it, they would reclaim their place among the stars.